That gets old, you know?
This is it. We have dry humor. She means that shit and then tries to cover it up later.
Think so?
That's what it is, yeah. She means that shit very well, but she just tries to cover it up. Now she's a bitch. It's like we were in the anatomy lab one day. It was me, Mackenzie, I think McCubbins was over there, Dr. McPherson, her, and maybe that's it, I don't know. But we were sitting over one of the cadavers, and Dr. McPherson said something like, yeah, I've been to Africa, it's a shithole, I wouldn't get back if you paid me.
Yeah.
And she said, hey, and I thought to myself right off the bat, I said, what the fuck are you talking about? You've been 40, you fucking nigga bitch.
Yeah, exactly.
And then he said, Dr. McPherson, God, he's nuts, man, he promised you. He said, I wouldn't go to fucking Africa if you paid me. It's a goddamn shithole. That's what he said. I swear, that's what the man said.
It is, objectively.
And she said, I swear to you, this is exactly what she said. She said, well, it's a very American thing to say. And he said, well, shit, I'm Canadian. And she shut up after that. And then he started going on about how Mexico was a shithole. Yeah. And McCubbin said, and Mackenzie started laughing. Well, Spencer was over there too. And Mackenzie said, well, he's going there next month, or whenever, in the summer. I guess he's going there for his honeymoon or whatever. I don't fucking know. Spencer is. And he said, Dr. McPherson looked Spencer right in the eye and said, I'd reschedule that shit. McPherson does not give a shit. I love that guy.
Yeah. That's the thing.
He's a shitty teacher. He's a great teacher, but he's hard as shit, but he's fucking mad.
Like, I'm not racist. I just don't like niggers.
Yes,
The big I will break the
What you just heard were 3 students that are being trained here to be future healthcare providers. And although the audio lacks some clarity, what they were doing was describing one of their African American classmates and how they hated niggers. And this audio, although you couldn't hear it clearly, was clearly released to this young lady's peers and her classmates. And everyone in her class knew about it. And she had to go every day to class with these people as the center of controversy. It was all she could think about or talk about. While the monsters who openly hated her, once the audio was released, they just went on with their lives. And her college continued to separate and isolate her as if she was the problem. But no one helped her. The next thing that we'll read to you is the email that she sent to the highest level of UK administrators. To protect her identity, we've omitted her name as well as the name of the administrators.
Dear blank, my name is blank, and I'm currently a student at the University of Kentucky. Recently, I have been the target of racial hate speech by other students in my class. On May 24th, 2015, a recording of this hate speech was emailed to the Office of Institutional Equity and Equal Opportunity. In the following days, this office contacted the Office of Student Affairs for blank to begin conducting an investigation. At this time, the office has received the names of the men who verbally attacked me and the text messages showing a history of hate speech and racially violent behavior. It has been 2 months, and no one from this office has contacted me about this matter, nor has any action been taken against these students at issue. Class resumes August 3rd, 2015, and I am concerned for my safety and my ability to succeed in a hostile environment where the students who attacked me are present daily. I'm writing to request that the university take action on this matter immediately, or I will have no other option but to seek legal counsel outside the university. I would appreciate a response regarding what actions the university plans to take regarding this matter by the end of business day on Monday, July 27th, 2015. This was a peer.
a colleague.
a friend.
It could have been me. Our goal is not to commission UK to change the minds of everyone on campus. We're here to present a problem. And the problem is that we trusted UK to protect us. We trust them to prioritize our safety and well-being.
UK should have mechanisms in place to guarantee equality, equity, and the quality of education for its minority students. We deserve to feel safe, supported, and included, and unbound by our academic pursuits, just as our non-marginalized peers.
Most of our non-minority classmates don't have to lose time or peace of mind over these types of issues. They don't have to go to their friends of a similar race to calm down or be talked down when yet another ignorant or racist comment is made in class. They don't have to research the entire UK website to find procedures that would protect them. They don't have to wait 2 months for administration to say, "I'm sorry, there's nothing we can do."
It could have been me. We won't wait to see how far this neglect will continue to go. We will not wait. No, we will not.
All it takes is an action for it to continue. This is why we're calling UK to action. The call UK to action is to call UK to accountability. It's time that UK puts its money and its resources toward its promises of belonging.
So please be sure to let your voice be heard by UK administration. Send us your questions via Twitter or use our index cards that we have passed out in the beginning. Welcome to UK Call to Action Town Hall event 2016.
And inside, inside of your packets, there will be a survey card. It's an index card where you can write down your questions. So it is a card for you to write down your questions for the administration part of the panel, where they will be answering questions from the audience. If the volunteers who will be collecting questions would stand up now so that the audience members can recognize you. These people are in black shirts, the UK Call to Action shirts, and they will be stepping into the aisles and taking your questions once the administrators finish with their presentation. And then, if Dr. Holloman Douglas and Dr. Collette could stand up, the volunteers will turn your questions in here.
So for part one of our agenda, we'll focus on raising the awareness of the racial climate concerns from African and African American students. In our first presentation, we'll be focusing on the racial climate concerns happening not only at UK, but nationally. The title of this presentation is #Black on Campus Overview. Della Mosley, a PhD candidate, and Miles Moody, a PhD student, will be given this presentation.
Welcome them.
All right. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you for caring. My name is Della Mosley, and I use the pronouns she and her. I'm a fourth-year counseling psychology doctoral candidate.
And I'm Miles Moody. I use the pronouns he and him, and I'm a first-year PhD student in the sociology program here at UK.
And we're going to provide some background and context on what's been going on nationally related to Black racial justice efforts. We want to situate our struggle here at UK with the struggle of our siblings from UCLA to Harvard and everywhere in between. However, we only have a few minutes to do that, so we do want to encourage you to check out the hashtag #BlackOnCampus on Twitter. You can get a lot of personal anecdotes, throw it into Google, and get some really great articles to give you a more representative view of what's been going on across the country. This is more than, actually, I also want to encourage the students who are here who feel safe to do so to also share their own stories of what it's been like to be Black on campus here. This is more than just hashtag activism. When there's not policy and procedures in place to document your struggle, you have to find different ways of doing that yourself to make yourself legible. And so that's what we're doing with this hashtag. In many ways, we're riding on a wave of campus activism that goes way back to the 1920s. We've been fighting for racial justice on campuses since we've been on campuses. It continued into the 60s with groups like CORE and SNCC, but the wave that we're riding on right now, it really was reinvigorated by the Concerned Student 1950 group out of the University of Missouri and their actions last year. For those who don't know the story, there was a group of 11 students originally who got together in response to ongoing racial tension on their campus and inaction of their administration in response to that. And so they had a lot of actions that were highly publicized and really successful. You might have heard about the parade demonstration, the boycott that the football team did, which importantly was supported by their coach, the hunger strike that Jennifer Butler underwent, and ultimately the resignation of their president. And so the actions of this group really inspired people across the country, reminded them of their power as students and their duty that they've always had to do as their ancestors have, which is to fight their oppression. In preparing for this talk, I did come across an interview of a man named Steve Bright, who was a UK student back in the late 60s and early 70s. He was interviewed in 1977 and asked about the racial climate. And I want to play his audio and let you listen to what he had to say about our campus back then. And as you listen to it, I want you to think about what we're experiencing here now. And also, I'll be showing some visuals from the homecoming parade demonstration so that you can see how our story then and now intersects with the broader campus climate.
What about the role of blacks on campus? There was a black student union, I believe, during the time that you were there. Was it an effective voice for the black students on campus?
I doubt it. There just wasn't much of a black presence at the university. That's all there was to it. It's always been phenomenal, at least it was at that time, phenomenal how few black people there were there. There were more black people at the University of Alabama, I believe, it's always said, and I think it's found to be true, than there were at the University of Kentucky. Just remarkable. And as a result of that, the people in the Black Student Union did not have a very significant voice, even at a time when black people all throughout the country were making themselves heard more and more. And any time you have that few people, you have a smaller group to choose from to come up with some kind of very articulate and effective spokesperson for the group. And if I recall, the Black Student Union did not always have such a person immediately available, although they had some people who were certainly interested in acting. But, I know certainly the year that I was student body president, while we were in contact and so forth, the black students just simply as a group were not what you would call a force on campus that year.
One of the things
So Bright speaks to the low numbers of students that were on UK's campus, and while today here we are again challenging administration to meet their stated diversity and inclusion goals. Bright talked about the responsibility that those few black students who were there had to be their own spokespersons, and you're watching this cycle continue as we had to create this space, volunteer our time, get faculty support, in order to be considered, as Bright said, a force. And he speaks to the irony of the inaction of the university at a time when so much was going on nationally in the 60s and 70s across campuses, which again rings true today as this happens, as closed-door meetings are held and passivity continues in the face of continued unrest and things like what has happened at Missouri and the larger Black Lives Matter movement. So here we are again, trying to articulate our experience and demanding to be taken seriously. What's different now from the time that Bright was describing is that now we're not alone. People all over the world are increasing their consciousness about both the historical and systemic impact of anti-Black racism and how it's impacting students and faculty. Over 1,000 people gathered in Cleveland for the Movement for Black Lives national convening last July. And out of that group, the Black Liberation Collective formed. And it's a little hard to see here, but I encourage you to check out their website to be inspired, to look at the 80+ schools who have been organizing together since that event, who have been sharing their demands, who have been having conference calls, sharing resources, and connecting. So we're joining a force that's not only grown in numbers, but it's also grown smarter, grown wider, grown more technologically savvy, and grown more critical in our analyses of institutional politics. And so Miles is going to talk a little bit more about some of the things that students across these campuses have been asking for and talk a little bit about how that relates to our experience here.
Excuse me. There are three main issues confronting Black students here at the University of Kentucky and on campuses across the country: inclusion and support at the institutional level, oppressive symbols and images on campus, and lack of representation. Again, tonight we do not have the time or resources to fully discuss each institution and each social injustice, so we'll stick with just a few of the more prominent examples to illustrate our points. During the uproar at Mizzou, Black students and organizations expressed their grievances with the administration's reluctance to provide a more inclusive environment for the students of color there. And when they did, they were faced with strong resistance, often in the form of online death threats from white students on campus as well as others in the community. Here, on the far left, is an email that a Black student sent to her professor the night before an exam that she had to take the next day. And as you can see in the email, she's explaining to the professor that she's aware of the threats that have been made towards her life and others who are Black if they show up to school. And she's asking the professor if she can make up the exam. And this was the response. She, like many other students, took the initiative to email their professors and to inform them of what was happening. And this is the type of response that students got from some of their professors. It says, if you don't feel like coming, if you don't feel safe coming to class, then don't come to class. I will be there, and there will be an exam administered in our class. Now, we know in the past, professors have been known to show more compassion during the threat of a potential snow day. But in this case, public death threats made to these Black students didn't warrant even an ounce of concern from some of their professors. Instead, their voices were silenced, and their apprehensions about racial hate crimes were simply disregarded as trivial and irrelevant, even though this was only less than 6 months after a white boy shot up a Black church in South Carolina as an act of terror and allegiance to white supremacist ideologies. The concern here is that in emergency situations such as school shootings or even the threat of explosives, they're only legitimated when the whole population is at risk, but not when solely Black people are targeted based on their race. And to the right of the email, you can see some of the things that have been said about Black people on social media here at the University of Kentucky. Just want to note, this does not promote inclusion on any level for Black students at predominantly white institutions. Here we have Martise Johnson, a senior at the University of Virginia who was unnecessarily thrown to the ground and bloodied outside of a bar that was commonly patronized by UVA students. The alcoholic beverage, better known as ABC, mistook his real ID as fake when he sought entry into the bar. He was then assaulted by these officers, arrested and jailed, and these officers were cleared. When students at UVA spoke out against this injustice and other forms of overt racism as well as the wide array of microaggressions that they face on a daily basis, they were also met with resistance, and people complained that their concerns and demands were not legitimate, which is a common response that Black students everywhere receive when they attempt to voice their concerns. Again, it's important to note that these instances are not in any good way or good method for facilitating the recruitment and retention of Black students on college campuses. Black high school students are more reluctant to apply to schools like Mizzou, UVA, and UK, and the students who are already at these schools, myself included, are forced to spend our time fighting oppression and affirming our self-worth when we could be using this time to learn and produce knowledge. This is the seal that represents the Harvard Law School. The seal memorializes the Royale family, who was responsible for their law school's first endowment. And as you can see, this is a highly controversial seal because their family's wealth was accrued by the work of Black slaves whom they owned. Images such as these affect the population in vastly different ways, much like the mural here at the University of Kentucky Memorial Hall, and even the employment of Confederate flags in public spaces. For one group, symbols such as these represent a proud heritage that is to be preserved, but for other groups, however, these symbols and images represent a long-standing history of hatred and the state-authorized enslavement of Black people and white supremacist notions. I should mention here that not only Black students, but Black faculty members as well are often met with resistance. As you can see, next to the seal is one of the many pictures of the Black professors at Harvard in the law school that was covered with black tape in response to the uproar over the seal and other oppressive images and symbols on the campus. And here is one of the hashtags that Black students at Harvard created in response to the insults and dismissals that they face from their peers on a regular basis. Recently, there was a public disagreement about the ways in which students and faculty at the Georgetown School of Law responded to the death of the Supreme Court Justice Scalia, one of their most notable alumni. During his life, he was a conservative scholar who made very controversial decisions and statements, even just a few months ago when he said that Black students should be at less advanced schools where they are more likely to perform better. When these students from Georgetown Law published their concerns with an open letter to the administration, people rigidly responded saying that Black students just need to grow up and that there's no room in law school for people who don't have thick skin, This was ironic considering that one of the major points that the Black Law Students Association raised, as you can see here, was that in the wake of Scalia's death, his supporters, who were mostly white conservatives, felt as though they were being treated insensitively by others on campus during their process of mourning, and they publicly acknowledged their discontent. Yet during the relatively recent outpour of nationally publicized instances of state-sponsored violence against Black people that's taken over the media these past few years, Black students at Georgetown were advised to not bring their emotions to class because law classrooms were not a safe space. This double standard exists in many public spaces for Black students around the country, as well as here at the University of Kentucky. All of these issues, inclusion and institutional support, as well as oppressive images and symbols, are exacerbated when students are not able to seek out support in these predominantly white spaces from faculty of color due to the lack of Black representation in authoritative positions. This is the current racial climate for Black students on campuses across America, and we know that the issues that we face here at the University of Kentucky are no different.
And so later you're going to see some more videos and hear from Black UK students about what their personal experiences have been. You'll hear about why we're demanding change. And later you hear from some undergrad and grad students about what type of change we're seeking. But we also think that it's important to talk about how we seek change. So I want to share some of our values and hope that the broader Black UK community is with us on these. The Black Liberation Collective, they stress that we got us. And we want to echo and personalize this for our community here. It's important to recognize that many Black students, staff, and faculty have experienced deep pain and chronic trauma as Black people in America, but also specifically here at UK. So despite continued institutional neglect and interpersonal abuses from peers and coworkers, we have to do as Asada Shakur so powerfully said, we have to love each other and support each other. And that means all of us in the Black UK community. I'm talking to you directly right now. We have to see, hear, know, and care for each other, including the Black first-generation students, our Black queer and gender expansive community members, the Black staff with fragile contracts, our Black Appalachian students, the young Black kids from the community who come to our campus for programming weekly, the Black international and multi-ethnic students, our Black community members who are patients, research participants, and our neighbors, the Black faculty whose authority is always under question and tenure is tenuous, the Black students struggling to maintain connection with their friends and families back home, the Black students who are isolated while they're here, the Black Muslim campus community members, the Black campus members with mental illnesses and who are differently abled, the Black campus members who are, of necessity, also activists and exhausted, yet encouraged by their ancestors and mentors and their visions of a future where they can be proud to associate themselves with and reflect back on their time at UK. That's what is meant by We Got Us. We are gonna love and support each other and create spaces and opportunities for us where it is safe to be seen and safe to be heard. Which brings us to authenticity and the phrase from the Black Youth Project 100 that I love, unapologetic Blackness. Both reflect our right to not only share our experiences, but also to feel and show our emotions, to name our hurt and our joy and everything in between. Black UK, please know that your reactions to the exclusion, the discomfort, the awkward silences, the long stares, they're legitimate. I know, we know, that your reactions are responses to very real things, and whatever your reactions to the persistent institutional inaction or subpar actions, they're valid. Your anger at the tokenism, it's valid. Your sadness after being microaggressed, it's okay. Your tendency to swing from a place of apathy to activism and back, that's founded, we get it, and you're not required to hide your reactions. While I will add, it's also okay if you decide that out of necessity and survival that it's better if you do. In the same way that you don't have to deny your experiences and emotions, being unapologetically Black also means making a decision to own your history, to own your culture, to correct it when it's being misrepresented, to let your melanin pop all over this campus despite the racial climate. Dr. Kevin Coakley talks about the psychological damage it does to Black folks to be in primarily white spaces, both students and faculty, and not see themselves represented. How it can lead them to question whether they're supposed to be there and to exert insane amount of effort to proving that they fit in or trying to prove that they belong. Imposter syndrome on 1,000, essentially. And I'm not here to convince administration or faculty or non-Black students that I and other Black students and faculty belong here. I am here to tell the Black UK community that even though sometimes you're treated like you don't belong, you are worthy of respect. You are worthy of a quality education. You are worthy of a non-oppressive workspace. You are worthy of care and concern and common decency. And like the Black Liberation Collective said, you are more than worthy of the things you've asked for. You do not need to sacrifice yourself, your language, your embodied knowledge, your culture to perform as a UK student or UK professor. This is who you already are. Continue to show up as yourselves, and we will continue to show up as ourselves as we fight for the respect that we deserve. We wouldn't be here if we didn't already know that respectability and our degrees and the ivory tower is not going to save us. As President Capilouto said at the Fixed Society panel last February, words out of tragedy need advocates. And so today you'll be allowed to hear stories from Black UK, and afterwards you'll also be able to read them on the hashtag UK Call to Action. And so part of our process involves persistently calling you in to be our advocates, in hopes that one day we can simply be students, workers, educators. And finally, and I'll come back to this a little later, community healing is essential. We have to take care of each other. And so later on, we're going to talk about an opportunity that we'll have to get together and bring some healers and clinicians together to offer some opportunities where we can really heal and come together and grow through this. And we'll also be encouraging our allies who are further along in their racial justice ally development to stand up and to serve as leaders and facilitate change amongst your peers. Everyone needs to get information. This is a call to action.
Well said. We do deserve to be respected, and we do deserve to be heard. Now that you've heard these stories that are happening nationally, both current and a bit historical, we're gonna let you hear from students. The next several presentations are gonna talk about concerns right here on UK's campus. So the first presenters are Kelly Moore and Isaac Epps. They're both undergrad students here. They've been to numerous meetings with administrators, including the meetings that you all have heard about with the president, and they're here to share their view. Kelly and Isaac.
We want to again thank everyone for coming and caring. Every undergraduate student who is accepted at the University of Kentucky wrote an essay on how you would contribute to diversity. As young high school students, the question probably left you imagining what UK was like. As you wrote out all the different ways you was diverse and how you enhanced their campus, you perhaps picture a school where everyone actively worked towards a diverse campus, from student to faculty. And once you finished your paper, you probably couldn't wait to go to a school that would open opportunities for you to grow, succeed, and meet many diverse people. However, if you happen to be the 7.7% black students who are currently attending the University of Kentucky, this might not be the reality you are living in.
The reality is the University of Kentucky is not as diverse as we thought. Upon meeting your advisor, you might be encouraged not to enroll in STEM-based majors. You probably have noticed by now that you will be the only black person in your class, from the professor to students. You may have been elected in that very class to be the representative of your entire race when your teacher carelessly asks you for the black perspective on a particular question, stripping you of your own individuality. You leave this class wanting to express this experience with a fellow student, just to learn that this isn't an isolated event, that he or she too experienced the same thing in their class. Counseling is your next step, but you would like to have an African American counselor, but there are none. Every year, you see more and more black students you call friends drop out or transfer, and even less of your friends graduating. When you see the deaths of unarmed black Americans at the hands of police, you decide, like the rest of black America, to protest because Black Lives Matter. You join in on the campus protest at the William T. Young Library and lie down with your fellow student to support the movement and a die-in to have students at your university, maybe sitting next to you in your class, call you many racial slurs on an anonymous social media. A moment in your life you will never forget that will isolate you even more.
Isolation will be a common feeling you'll learn to grow accustomed to here at the University of Kentucky, far from the diverse picture you once imagined, and the many unspoken, covert, and overt racist acts that every black student has experienced on campus further distance us from that picture. We are here today to open the dialogue for ways to work towards creating that campus we all imagined when we once wrote our essays. Since November, we have been given opportunities to speak with the president of our university and other senior administrators on what changes could be made to improve the campus. 5 concerns were brought to their attention that night, in which they have strived to make efforts to address and change since then. When pictures surfaced on social media and news hit the community of what happened that November night, the mural was the only issue taken away from the community in our community.
But the conversation was more than just pictures of slaves on the wall. So we made sure to continue our efforts to bring diversity to our campus through dialogue with our fellow students and other faculty members, and we have learned something important. To want a change, you must actively demand it. This can be seen not only in the meeting with senior administrators, but with the counseling center as well. When we met with them and talked about microaggressions and ways they can help African American students, they listened and worked with us to create the change that is needed to better our school.
Tonight is only the beginning of a long road to improve the University of Kentucky for everyone. But let it be clear that it will take the UK community to put in efforts to make a diverse and inclusive community. Together with the black grad students, we have came up with a list of demands.
Accessibility to resources and funds, scholarships, and funds for organizations for African American programming.
The restructure of Office for Institutional Diversity to be efficient and empowering.
Create measurable benchmarks for diversity and accountability measures.
Hire more African American professors and retain them here on our campus.
And to create and finally, to create a class on race and ethnicity that all students must take as a graduation requirement to discuss cultural sensitivity.
We feel as though as if the campus as a whole worked towards fixing these concerns, the school will be heading to a better place. But we'll need to do this together.
From students to faculty. Thank you.
I just want to, one more time, for Kelly and Isaac. They're undergraduate students, and they're advocates, and they're demanding change. So that's why they get to go into rooms with people and tell their demands, and people listen to them. But what about the undergraduates that are not Kelly and Isaac? Those are the ones who they're fighting for. And what I would hate is that when they come back for graduate or professional school at whatever university, that UK will be having this same conversation years later. That is what we're trying to prevent, and that is why we're calling UK to action. Now it's time for myself and Essie Iguodaro. I am the president of the Black Graduate and Professional Student Association, and this is my amazing vice president, Essie Iguodaro. And one of our roles is to function as advocates for Black graduate and professional students here at UK. And so, in our presentation, we're going to talk to you about the concerns that our population has. We're going to start by telling you, we're going to talk a little bit about the strategic plan, but we just want to mention that, once again, there is a very big initiative for inclusion and diversity that's rolled out. It's always a major section of the plan. However, you know, after thoroughly looking at it, it is not quite meeting our needs at all. And it seems to be a lot of rhetoric, and there's a lot of potential. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. Go ahead.
And as a student, I have had a long track record here at the University of Kentucky. I enrolled at the University of Kentucky in 2007, and we're in 2016. And in the strategic plan, they talk about diversity and inclusion. So if you want to include, if you're trying to include African American students, I think the first thing you should do is ask African American students why do they not feel included? And so since my years here, I have never been asked that question. So we decided to take it upon ourselves to do just that, to ask those questions. Why do you not feel included here at the University of Kentucky by conducting a racial climate survey, which we will be talking about right now.
And these sorts of surveys help to inform committees who are planning strategic plans. So once again, we strongly believe that if you want to know how the Black students are feeling on UK campus, you have to ask.
So, what are the methods of our racial climate survey? The target audience was the University of Kentucky African and African American professional and graduate students. This survey was sent to all these students. And our response rate was about 20%, or N equals 53. So where do we get these questions from? I'm a scientist. So what we did is we went online and we looked at previously published racial climate surveys from Cornell University, University of Maryland, and the University of Missouri. So here is the breakdown of the individuals that completed our survey. And as you can see, a lot of the individuals come from all the different colleges here at the University of Kentucky. The top two colleges were the College of Education and the College of Medicine. In addition, the average duration of the people who completed our survey was 3 years, meaning that these people have been at this university for a long time, so they can attest to the racial climate here at the University of Kentucky. So the first thing we wanted to ask was we wanted to ask individuals how they felt about the campus climate. So what we did is we had 5 options ranging from I feel very uncomfortable to very comfortable. So here you can see that only about a third of students felt comfortable with the current racial climate here at the University of Kentucky.
We also gave responders an opportunity to freely answer questions so that they could give a bit of context for their answers. So these are open-ended responses. So, open-ended responses to the overall racial climate. Many times, I'm the only black student in my class or department. I feel like African Americans are tolerated on campus, but not welcomed as belonging, as equal members to the campus community. It is just stressful to be in campus spaces and rarely see other people that look like you, except in service positions, if that. In my opinion, the racial climate that surrounds this campus seems situated perpetually, might I add, at the brink of awaiting an unexpected yet inevitably racial charged event or situation. To me, the University of Kentucky seems inherently, maybe not intentionally, racist.
So the next question or the next statement we wanted to attest to was the feelings of isolation or feelings of, or experiences of microaggression. So we asked the question, or we presented the statement, UK campus is free from racial conflict. About 75% of the people that took our survey strongly disagreed or disagreed with this statement. That needs to change.
We asked students if they experienced microaggressions on campus or in class. Microaggressions is defined as a racially motivated insult or dismissal. And as you can see, 60%, more than half of the students experience microaggressions in class or on campus. So the point is these are not isolated incidences. Then we asked if the students feel isolated on campus because there are not many people that look like them. Once again, 50% of people, more than 50% of people agree. Open-ended responses about their experiences. Sometimes I feel like my colleagues attempt to communicate to me through their stereotypical views of my culture. I've found it difficult as an African American TA at times. I'm aware that students often think I'm not qualified to teach. UK's campus feels like the Confederate South. There's one professor in our college that is known for making racial slurs and comments that are inappropriate.
So with these statements, we wanted to understand, do African American students, do they struggle with their racial identity on campus? So the most striking one will be the third one, and the statement was posed, I feel I need to minimize various characteristics of my racial ethnic culture to be able to fit in at the University of Kentucky. About 45% of individuals said yes. Does that mean this university is inclusive? I disagree.
And I'll also point out the top question. Whoop. I feel comfortable discussing issues of race, racism, and/or racial discrimination with faculty in my college or department. So once again, these are graduate and professional students, so we have mentors that are faculty in our department, so we know them. It's not a strained relationship. And still, majority of students did not feel comfortable discussing issues of racism or discrimination in the department. So who are they talking to? Open-ended? The success I have experienced as a grad student oftentimes feels like they have occurred in spite of the academic environment in my college or department. There seems to be a white male preference for opportunities, teaching classes, funding, mentorship. UK only appreciates black students with a ball in the hands. The rest of us are tolerated.
So with these statements, we want to assess how comfortable or how safe individuals feel on campus. So I will point you to the first question or the first statement that says, if I or a friend were harassed at UK, I know where to go for help. More than half of the respondees agree or disagreed or strongly disagree with this statement, meaning they don't know where to go for help. The most striking one, in our opinion, is the fourth one down. The statement was, I feel students feel comfortable coming forward with racial harassment complaints on campus. Almost 75% of the respondees strongly disagreed or agreed with this statement, meaning that when they experience harassment or discrimination, they keep it to themselves because they believe and they feel that administrators, faculty, staff will not do anything.
Number 2 is also striking. I understand the formal procedure for complaints of harassment. Most of the students don't know where to go or what the procedure is. Open-ended? I haven't experienced racial harassment, but if it were to happen, I probably wouldn't report it because I feel that nothing would be done about the situation. This is a common statement, so I don't know who the responder is, but this is something that we hear from a lot of our peers. I did not report the incident with the professor because he had already been reported many times before, and nothing has changed. I've heard stories of black students on campus being referred to as niggers, and stories about African American women not feeling safe on campus at night or in isolated spaces when encountering white men. I was called the N-word on UK campus. I do not feel safe on this campus or in this community.
And the last statements that we posed are whether or not students would come back, would they continue their education, would they go on to postdocs, would they become faculty members or part of staff? So I'll point you to the first statement. After graduating from my program, I would consider staying at UK to further my education/career, i.e. residency, clinical postdoc, and or faculty position. About 40% of these respondees said no or strongly disagreed with this statement, meaning once they graduate, they're out the door.
And if UK is committed to inclusion and diversity and recruiting talented students, if it can't get the students that it trained to come back, how is it going to recruit outside minorities who are talented? So the next group that is going to come to you and present, they're also going to present data. And this data is from a study that they did in their department. So in addition to the perspectives that we were able to get from African American students, they looked at data looking at recruitment and retention.
I gave you the slides, right? Oh, okay, cool, okay. I feel a little vertically challenged here. My name is Takumi Delisle.
I'm a former UKBGPSA student and a co-founder of the Coalition of Anthropology Students of Color. We are an independent organization advocating for people of color, specifically students in anthropology, and we recently completed a retention report for the anthropology department for the years 2005 through 2014. My partner, Veronica Miranda, couldn't be with me today, but we are here to share this report in our support for this important call for true diversity. This report was born out of the need to have access to data that demonstrates the state of graduate students of color in the department through time. Currently, the graduate school and the department do not provide access to recent general enrollment statistics that also include demographics. We wanted to use our data as a starting point to engage in productive conversations within the department about the experiences of graduate students of color. In terms of methods, the way we collected the data is fairly simple, although it took us quite some time to do so. We asked a couple of students from each cohort to list the ultimate academic outcome of their peers and themselves. I hope you can see this. As a summary of our data, you're looking at a graph illustrating the current number of students enrolled in the graduate program. Nope. The top one. Oh, there you go. SOC stands for Students of Color. We identified the 5 cohort years, 2007 through 2011, as problem years for recruitment and retention of students of color, since there is no single student of color from the 4 cohorts, 2007, 2008, 2010, and 2011. But how did they get to this place? Now, there were 2 academic years, 2007 and 2011. Whoop, I'm a little shaky, right there. When not a single student of color entered the program, while 9 white students entered in 2007 and 15 white students in 2011. There were also 2 cohort years, 2008 and 2010, 2008 and 2010 there, when 100% of enrolled students of color left the program, leaving only 2 students of color remaining in the program from cohorts 2007 through 2011. Now, what the data indicates is that the department's experience with the retention and recruitment of students of color has been problematic. This may appear a thing of the past and thus irrelevant for the current and future diversity climate, but the lack of students of color from previous generations can have long-term detrimental impacts on the well-being of current and future students of color. For instance, students of color who have come in after 2011 have no senior peer role models or mentors on campus who could help guide them through graduate school, such as offering support for conducting fieldwork, completing the dissertation writing process, managing financial hardships, and working through the history of discrimination and an implicit bias in higher education. We certainly commend the concerted efforts the department has made in the last few years to recruit more students of color, but without more concerted retention efforts for the current students, the vicious cycle will continue. Furthermore, the fact that there are only 3 students of color currently enrolled in the program from 2005 through 2011 means that very few students of color will be graduating within the next 5 years, possibly only 3 students. And we are estimating this based on the national average time to graduate in the discipline of anthropology, which is 9 to 10 years. Yeah, I know. It's tough, isn't it? It's a national average. Lots of money. Okay, so we really hope that the graduate school and other graduate programs are collecting more data, such as numbers on diversity and the real stories from students of color. I was called anti-white. I was told, go home, go back to the place you belong to. But my stories are not isolated incidents, and such data can help break the silence about racism on campus. What needs to be done then is to make sure to have good plans for both successful recruitment of students of color and fruitful retention of students of color. And finally, our primary recommendation is that mentorship needs to be built into graduate programs from the beginning. Mentorship for students of color must become a fundamental institutional component of how graduate programs teach and prepare students. And now is the time, as an institution, to make meaningful changes and move toward true diversity. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. The next thing, now that we've provided you with qualitative and quantitative information, we wanted to show you a video to get firsthand interviews of students here at UK talking about their experiences on the University of Kentucky.
Academia in general just seems to have, it doesn't seem to welcome diversity because there's a certain cultural capital that you have to have. Academia in general just seems to have, it doesn't seem to welcome diversity because there's a certain cultural capital that you have to have in order to be considered academic or intelligent. You can't operate within that space to be diverse, and like you're not welcome in that space. If I can't put on a suit and tie and hide my culture, then I'm not welcome. That tends to be problematic because I have to wear my upbringing, and I can't bring that into a space like UK and feel like I'm a valued member of this community.
I was walking from class, from my building, Wellington 3, to my class in Fine Arts building. Like this car drove by and it was a group of white guys inside and one yelled out and called me an ugly nigger. That was just very different. Like I've never had that happen before to me. It wasn't a good feeling at all. I felt ugly. I felt just unsafe.
I was talking to this guy and I guess he felt some type of way because he didn't have any scholarships or anything like that. And he was like, yeah, you know, I'm a white middle-class male, so I can't get any scholarships. And he was like, you know, you have to be black or you gotta be poor to get scholarships. And I don't think that's true because I know a lot of people don't like the William C. Parker scholarship because they think only black people can get it. But I know a lot of black people that applied to it and didn't get it. And I know white people and other races of people that do have it.
I am a Fall 2013 Emerging Leader Institute alumni. It's for students who have good leadership skills and they're seeking to shape and polish their leadership skills. I was in a class of 13 students. I was the only African American. Granted, I'm biracial, but I'm a student of color. So I don't know, for maybe like the first 2 months of the class, Sometimes there were times that I felt really uncomfortable. I couldn't relate to any of the other students.
I have a key to the building where my office is located, and it's probably somewhere between 4:30 and 5:30 in the morning. I was up early, so I decided, since I couldn't sleep at home, I might as well come to my office and do work. And a set of UK's finest police officers see me trying to get in the building, and my card wouldn't buzz into the building scanners to open the door. And police officer asked me, was I lost? They said some stuff had been happening on campus, and they just wanted to know what was I doing around here. And maybe I look suspect with a book bag and a lunch bag and a key that got me in the building. Maybe that is suspect. Had I been a white kid, they wouldn't have said nothing. And the reason I can say that is because there was another white guy walking across that walked past me going the opposite direction. They didn't stop him or say a word.
I was a resident assistant 1 year, and my younger sister experienced a situation where she was going across Avenue of Champions, and a car pulled in front of her and threw a noose out in front of her. She came back to the residence hall scared, flustered, and we called UKPD, and thinking that UKPD would step in and be there to protect and serve, but instead they did nothing.
When I was at Florida State University, I was in a predominant white fraternity, and no way, no shape or form, I felt excluded. I felt, I didn't fit in. They embraced me, and I embraced them, and it was a strong fraternity within that. And I was at the time, I was the only Black American in that fraternity. So with that being said, being in University of Kentucky, it made me feel isolated. I had a patient come up to me and ask me if I was a doctor. And I said, no, I'm not a doctor. I'm a physician assistant. And he told me with a straight face that nobody wants to see a Black doctor in Kentucky. I didn't say anything, no response. I just turned back, and I decided just to really just walk away from that situation. I had another student from College of Health Science came up to me. He said, oh, there was a suspect late last night. It was a 6-foot Black male, African-American male. He's in his 20s. And he was like, yeah, I could basically turn you in right now. You fit the description. And I think that was really my last straw. And that's when I stepped up within the PA program and I said, things got to change in a lot of ways.
So I'm feeling, man, just don't nobody want to hear our pain. So I'm feeling when I'm flipping through them Twitter comments, all I feel is rain. They telling me get over it, it's so that stuff don't exist no more. But that don't ring true when I look in these streets. So it's real when I feel like it could have been me. Man, can I tell you how I'm feeling right now? Right now.
I would just like them to know that sometimes minorities do have a harder time adjusting to the college life.
We are students, like we're not all athletes. Like we excel academically.
I think an important thing for faculty and staff to understand is that when people come to you with these complaints, they're not crazy, and that's not something that's formed from their imagination. This is a lived experience.
Don't just judge us off of what you see in that period because you don't know what we're going through in that semester. Take the time to get to know us and what we want to do and support us.
My hopes for the future of racial diversity at the University of Kentucky would be to have more professors that look like me, especially in the College of Education. I can count how many African American professors there are on one hand, and I just feel like that's not good representation of who goes to the university.
I would love for there to be more unity on this campus. I know there's potential, but I haven't seen it in the past 5 years that I've been here.
I know we have certain programs here like CARES, SSS,
tutoring. We have the MLK Center and things like that, but I just feel like we need to expand those a little more to help people stay and help people graduate.
My hopes and aspirations are that UK continues and will adopt and have an environment where students can thrive, where students can feel welcome and be able to learn and earn, feeling confident that not only is there administration behind them, but that the folks that they learn and earn with receive them and are open to their differences.
My hope or aspiration would be to have UK treat all of the black students as well as they treat the black basketball players during basketball season. So the same respects and greetings and highs and hellos and joyous and everything that go on, and the same happiness and the same joy that they had with those guys. Treat us all like that just all year round.
I'm talking about finding solutions, finding answers, doing questionnaires, challenging people, helping people think outside the box as to why we think like this. Why is University of Kentucky think like this?
One day, when the glory comes, it will be ours.
From a minority standpoint, we're tired of it. In no way, shape, and form, I do not want the University of Kentucky to be on the news just like Missouri was on the news. So that's why I say that we find a solution now before it gets there, because history tends to repeat itself when it comes to these type of situations.
Now the war is not over, victory isn't won, but we'll fight on to the finish, and then when it's all done, we'll cry glory, oh glory.
In the interest of time, while we get ready to welcome the administrators who have joined us to the stage, we'd ask at this time if you begin to send your index cards with your questions to the end of the aisles, and then the volunteers will be collecting them. So the volunteers will be out of their seats and everyone else could just send them, pass them to the edges, okay? And so now, we'd like to welcome the administrators to the stage and thank them for joining us. And they are all, thank you. While they're coming to the stage, if you all will look into the packets that you were given, they have our student concerns in them. And so you can reference some of those when the administrators are talking. And so the panel, each person will have about a 5-minute presentation. And then at the end, we will ask a couple of pre-written questions, but we really want to get to the audience questions. So, the first person that we'd like to welcome to come speak is Carol Taylor Shim, the social justice educator and UK College of Social Work. Excuse me.
Okay. Again, kind of short.
Thank you all so very, very much for being here. And I really, really want to thank all of the students who took the time outside of being students and learning to really put this together. So I so very, very much appreciate this opportunity. Excuse me. So I have the pleasure of starting the presentations off for administrators. And what we're going to do is walk through the university's response to the student demands. And we're going to start out talking about our bias incident response. And so first, it's important to understand the guiding principles under which this plan was put together. We recognize that cultivating and nurturing a welcoming and affirming learning environment is the responsibility of every member of the UK community. It is vital to have a collaborative approach to this complex issue with processes that are transparent and inclusive. Responding to these issues is an ever-evolving process. This is a starting point, and we know that this process will change over time to respond to the needs of our campus community. And so, effective immediately, the Violence Intervention and Prevention Center has expanded our scope of services to provide support and advocacy to those who have experienced violence or threatening or harassing behavior based on an aspect of their identity or perceived identity, including race, ethnicity, ancestry, citizenship or immigration status, sexual orientation, gender, gender identity, gender expression, ability, including physical, psychological, and cognitive, age, religion, religious practice, veteran status, and parenting or pregnancy status. Again, these services are effective immediately. The services offered by the VIP Center are support at the time of crisis, resources to support your physical, emotional, and academic well-being, information on reporting options, assistance navigating campus and community reporting systems. Services and support can be accessed by undergraduate, graduate, and professional students. This does extend to folks in healthcare, faculty, and to staff. What we have in progress is a review of all applicable policies, excuse me, practices, regulations, and definitions. We are working to establish a framework for a student advisory board and a faculty and staff advisory board in the spirit of transparency and collaboration. We are also in the process of exploration of opportunities for collaborative data collection related to the racial climate on UK's campus. By the end of the spring 2016 semester, we will have established our Bias Incident Response Team and the protocol. Our Bias Incident Response Team, or the BIRT, is the entity through which incidents of identity-based violence and harassment can be reported, reviewed, and appropriate action can be taken in response. This will allow the university to respond to individual incidents and to examine trends and themes that need to be addressed. During the summer of 2016, we will be engaging in capacity building for VIP staff, the Bias Incident Response Team, administration, and the advisory boards. This capacity building will be centered around the following, but not limited to, unconscious bias, microaggressions, and inclusive excellence. Academic year 16-17, we will implement our Bias Incident Response Protocol. We will explore options for peer education program, and we will begin to engage faculty and staff in establishing a formal mentor program for all incoming freshmen. The following academic year, we will launch our freshman faculty and staff mentor program, and we will also engage in the expansion of our Green Dot bystander intervention program to address acts of harassment and violence based on identity or perceived identity. The following year, we will institute an online anti-bias training for all students, staff, and faculty, and we will host a statewide conference on bias incident response support best practices. This is the plan that has been worked on by lots and lots of people. It has been blessed by administration, and this is the commitment that UK is taking immediately to address the climate for marginalized students on this campus. So thank you, and I would ask that folks hold their questions until all of the presenters have gone, and then we can start to field those questions. So thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. So now the senior administrators will be giving a presentation on the various concerns that we have discussed at the November and the February meeting. So the senior administrators here today include Dr. Charlie Carlson, Senior Vice Provost for Academic Excellence, Dr. Sandra Feets-Price, Associate Provost for Faculty Affairs, Dr. Susan Carvalho, Interim Dean of Graduate School and Associate Provost for International Programs, Mr. Victor Hazard, Interim Associate Vice President for Student Affairs and Dean of Students, Mr. Terry Allen, Interim Vice President for Institutional Diversity, and Dr. Cleo Price, the Assistant Dean for the Graduate School.
Good evening and welcome. I'd like to thank Erica and SA and the organizing committee for putting together this town hall this evening. It's a great opportunity to continue our work together in our common goals of making UK the most welcoming, diverse, and inclusive university possible where our students can succeed, as well as our faculty and staff. We really enjoyed the conversations and the dialogue over the past few months, both the meeting in November with the students as well as the follow-up meeting in February. The students did a wonderful job of presenting their concerns, also dialoguing and potential solutions, as well as helping us think through the issues and how we can best respond, but also how we can take actions to make sure that, again, UK is diverse, welcoming, and inclusive. We're going to spend some time this evening telling you about some of the steps we've taken since that time, and again, working together toward our common goal. So at this time, I'd like to introduce Interim Vice President Victor Hazard, who will speak to you about the first set of concerns. Dean Hazard.
And backwards, forward and backwards, okay.
So maybe okay.
One continue.
So sorry for that. What I also want to do is just remind you of a couple pieces in the strategic plan. This is the overall vision for the University of Kentucky Strategic Plan, which approved by the Board of Trustees in October of 2015. And I also want to stress that then there is a diversity and inclusivity strategic objective. And I will read this one, and that is to enhance the diversity and inclusivity of our university community through recruitment, promotion, and retention of an increasingly diverse population of faculty, administrators, staff, and students, and by implementing initiatives to provide rich, diversity-related experiences for all to help assure their success in an interconnected world. And so that, again, is published on the web. You can find that in many places. Search on UK Strategic Plan. It's also under the Office of the Provost that you can find that strategic plan. So now I will turn it over to Interim Vice President Hazard.
Thank you, Provost Tracy. Good evening, faculty, staff, students, and interested guests. I wanted to just briefly go through part of the concerns that we addressed with the students back in November, and indeed earlier this semester, earlier in February. I want to first point to, there are four different areas that I want to speak to specifically that were some specific student concerns related to. Scholarships being one of them. We will then talk about what I would call inclusive integrated graduate concerns that our graduate school is going to be addressing, as well as programming needs that our students articulated, access to facilities, and then the code of student conduct. So we'll briefly speak to those. Speaking first, I want to speak to the scholarships. I think many times a picture is worth 1,000 words, so let me make sure we've got the right Here you'll see in front of you on the screen for your own eyes the articulation we have for the William C. Parker Diversity Scholarships in front of you, with particular note, if you would look, obviously from 2009, I believe, through 2015, you will see an increase, almost double increase with regards to scholarship funds related to that area. That is with the undergraduate experience. And then as we move forward to the graduate, you'll see the graduate scholarships there as well. You will see the upward trend, as it were, related to monies that have been designated for those purposes with a graduate's diversity scholarships. It is, in my opinion, it is that picture and that trend will continue to move, obviously, because I think it's a deep commitment that I believe Dr. Capilouto does have. The takeaway that I would have related to this has to do with that he has the current fiscal climate will not deter Dr. Capilouto from his efforts with regards to these scholarships, and will not diminish his zeal in any way related to that. Let me just back up here one more. At this point, I want to briefly speak to the graduate school, and I've asked Dr. Cleo Price to come, Assistant Dean for the graduate school, to speak about graduate initiatives that are in play.
Good evening, UK family. September 2015, the officers of the Black Graduate and Professional Student Association approached the graduate school leadership with a list of initiatives, asking that we look at these initiatives and address the initiatives. One of the initiatives was a diversity office, not having one available, nor having a diversity officer available. So the leadership in the graduate school consulted, and we did some reallocating of my job duties in the graduate school as assistant dean. And now I am fully engaged into recruiting and retention of underrepresented students in the graduate school. We also were told about an initiative regarding the Graduate Diversity Advisory Council. It had been inactive. And so we revived that, and now the council meets, the advisory council meets every month on a Friday. We've also extended offers to other underrepresented groups to be a part of this council. As a chair of the council, my goal is to ensure that we do a fine job, a more active job of recruiting underrepresented students here at UK, especially graduate students. And also to ensure that every underrepresented student here at UK, especially graduate students, are successful. That's our job, to make sure you're successful, you feel connected, you're a part of this university. And the last initiative that I've begun working on is that of a mentor program. I've talked to Ohio State, I've talked to Vandy, I'm talking to other of our benchmarks concerning their mentoring programs to get an idea of what we can offer here at UK. Not only that, I want to ensure I talk to faculty and students to find out what can we offer, what can we do. We're going to take our time, we're going to get it done right, but I plan to have something in place by the fall of this year. So these are some initiatives we're working on. There are a couple of others we're still in the process of deciding and working on and talking about and strategizing about. But those are the three strategies that the graduate school has adopted and moving forward with. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Price. Speaking about programming, just briefly, there was obviously concerns around the ability to have programming on campus that was channeled towards African American students. As such, as interim vice president for student affairs, I consulted with and had a meeting with my executive director for student involvement, which encompasses advisement over our 500 plus registered student organizations to include SAB and SJAG. And I challenged her to revisit the policies and procedures related thereto as it related to any hindrances that might be in place for appropriate programming going forward. As such, they've made adjustments with respect to proceeding and will be making sure to ensure requests and needs are appropriately addressed in timely fashion. Examples of that would be most recently, many of you are aware of the underground formal that took place approximately a week ago. Some 400 plus students were involved in that formal and indeed my understanding was a very positive experience. And I would also add that the athletics department offered their facility in order to conduct that particular event. Additionally, Student Government Association has appropriated funds related to African American programming and indeed is channeling funds to the Martin Luther King Student Center. The center with reference to programming and needs that they might have both now and going forward. Speaking briefly to, obviously, facilities. Obviously, facilities is a challenge on campus with the decommissioning, if you will, of the student center. The pressure on facilities and what might be available for use for programming, be it for athletic events or other activities that our students might want to be involved with. I would make this statement related to this, that there is, I believe, our Executive Vice President for Finance and Administration, our Student Center staff, as well as athletics, as well as Terry Allen and his people have indeed been meeting to identify facilities for use by our African American students and all of our students, obviously, relative to space where they can do the appropriate programming moving forward. And I just mentioned the athletics and their involvement with that, with coming forth with a facility for the formal that just took place. Additionally, as we look at the fall of 2016, related to the African American Step Show that's typically taken place, I believe they will be looking at an athletic facility as well for that, given the press on facilities that we've been having related to the decommissioning, as I stated, of the Student Center. Last but not least, the Code of Student Conduct. Students expressed concern for lack of civility statements related, as well as non-discrimination statements that they perceive were not involved in the Code of Student Conduct. The new Code of Student Conduct is being revised as we speak. It is, I believe, in the hands of a Student Government Association who are providing their appropriate feedback and recommendations to the President. That goes to the Board of Trustees in May, is my understanding, but I can assure you that there are indeed statements related to civility and non-discrimination related to that document. My staff and the Office of Student Conduct were indeed involved with that on the front end in coming up with the initial draft. We noticed that needed to be more strongly articulated, and as such, we have put that in. We are currently working, obviously, with the Office of the President and the Provost to bring that about. Thank you. At this point, we have Mr. Terry Allen to come to speak to you at this point. Thank you.
Good evening. As Dean Hazard said, my name is Terry Allen. I've served in the role of Interim Vice President for Institutional Diversity for several months, having been at the University of Kentucky for a number of years. It's been a challenging experience. I started today this morning at 8 o'clock at Keeneland, speaking to the executive leadership of healthcare on our campus about diversifying the leadership in our healthcare operation. That particular operation occupies almost half of the population on our campus and in employment. And I certainly think that there's a lot of work to do there and a lot of initiatives in place to improve. I have a concern. The concerns are the Office of Institutional Diversity is not effectively structured or empowered. The recommendations were to restructure, as well as funding and powers, as well as racial violence and discrimination. I would like to go back, first of all, to talk about a conversation that I had with Erica Littlejohn following the November 12th meeting at Maxwell Place with the President. Erica came to me and said that she felt that they were very, very hard, the students were, that attended that night on the Office for Institutional Diversity. And I told her there was no need to express concern because everything the students said that night was absolutely true. There is room for improvement, and we must improve, and we set out every day in order to do so. I will move to the actions at this point. So the first one says to develop a sustainable infrastructure for institutional diversity. Upon arriving at that particular office, it was established under what was previously known as task force driven. And even though the task force is engaged in a lot of discussion, that there was a lot of work that occurred with many, many people, I did not understand who was responsible. And I also looked at the work that occurred, and I did not understand that the work was sustainable. And so with that in mind, we've been in the process of changing the structure for how that particular unit operates altogether. It must be something that's sustainable. We must infuse diversity in everything we do throughout the University of Kentucky. Quite often I see the same faces in the same meetings doing the same things. Where is everyone else? I'm just so pleased to be here tonight and see such an audience, to see so many people that have come to engage in these discussions having to do with diversity and inclusivity. We must remediate. We must do a better job of remedying the problems, the ills that occur, and I think you've heard that very clearly from the students that have been here tonight, from what they have said. We don't do a good enough job. There are regulations, obviously, but it goes beyond that. It goes to the individual. How has the individual been harmed? How have groups of people been harmed? Because quite often with the ugly things that occur, that is the intent. But what have we done in order to make things better, to make people feel welcome and make people feel appreciated, not for who someone else thinks they should be, but for who they really are? The third thing we must do is we must be advocates, and advocates for one another, advocates for what occurs here each and every day. The U.S. Supreme Court, for example, is in the process of deciding on a case, and that particular case is Fisher versus the University of Texas. And in that case, the plaintiffs have said that the use of race and ethnicity in awarding admission as well as financial aid is no longer needed. It's no longer needed. I respectfully disagree. And I think that the university must continue its effort, and that's what President Capilouto has stated, that we will continue our effort regardless of the outcome of that particular case. We must protect the integrity of our diversity scholarships and fellowships, and we will. The next is the assessment of the Office of Institutional Effectiveness. There is a campus survey that has been issued to 3,000 students as well as 1,500 employees to respond to a survey of the effectiveness of the office. What I'm attempting to do is to establish an understanding of where the office is at this particular point, and not just the office, but the division as a whole and what needs to be done. We're interacting and having conversations with benchmark institutions, in particular the institutions that are the land-grant flagship institutions that comprise the Southeastern Conference. And from there we will expand to go beyond that nationally. We will look at staffing. The central office for institutional diversity consists of 3 people. Myself, there is an administrative assistant, and there is a budget officer, and that is the central office. So we're looking at staffing. We must determine what are the skills and what is necessary in that particular office to make it much more sustainable as a whole, and not rush to that decision, but to take our time and look very carefully at what's involved and come to an understanding of then what needs to be done. And that will be done as time goes on. There are 5 units that make up institutional diversity as a division. The 5 units are CARES, the Center for Academic Resources and Enrichment Services. They do a tremendous job. However, as I looked at that unit, I saw that one counselor in the unit was responsible for 700 students, and that made no sense to me. So at this point, we have hired 2 additional counselors to staff the CARES Center, and we will hire more as time goes on, as the student population grows, if necessary. Student support services for low-income, first-generation, and disabled students that has been relocated into a new facility, along with the Disability Resource Center. The Martin Luther King Center, I give them praise for the effort and the effectiveness on this campus having to do with programming. We've worked very hard and will continue to work very hard to prepare to move into the new student center, to be right in the very main traffic area of the main entrance of the new student center, and we have less than 2 years in order to complete that task. Health Colleges Student Diversity Services, don't get used to the name because soon it will change to the Center for Graduate and Professional Diversity Initiatives. We're in the process of expanding the center. We will look for new locations. We're on the list to receive new space. It's much inadequate at this point, but to receive new space and to expand the initiatives beyond just the 6 health colleges to every college on this campus, every graduate and professional student on this campus. That will occur, and we're starting with the programming, which you will see occur during this semester itself. There is a 3-year phased-in plan that has been put forward by the director, who is Chastity Holloman Douglas, and we will make that phase plan occur. There is the new University of Kentucky Diversity Plan. We're subject to a diversity policy of the State Council on Post-Secondary Education, and the plan that will comply with that policy will outline the goals for enrollment, student success, the graduation rate, as well as the number of degrees conferred, employees, and most importantly, the campus climate. We must make progress continuously, or else this institution cannot submit requests for new academic programs. I'm happy to announce the Diversity Organizations Council. As I understand, that's administered by Khalil Baker and others in the Martin Luther King Center. It has been funded at the amount of $10,000, which includes 20 $500 grant opportunities per academic year for diverse student organizations for programming. That amount is doubled and is doubled right away for an additional $10,000. I encourage the student organizations to challenge us even more, that we will have to increase that amount even further. There are 2 more. The mural in Memorial Hall, a committee of individuals consisting of those on the campus, primarily faculty, a total of 14 on the campus, as well as from the community, as well as Rashad Bingham is the student representative that serves on the committee. I must say he, as well as the other committee members, are very vocal. We're making a recommendation at some point, not in a really big hurry, but making a recommendation at some point to the president that will be sustained over time. This is a symbol of protest on our campus for many, many years, again and again, and yet as you walked into Memorial Hall not long ago, there it was. This time we will do something, I'm not sure as to exactly what. Melinda Price and I co-chair this committee, but we will have a result that will change this university as far as that particular symbol is concerned. And last but not least is the Center for Equality and Social Justice. That is one of the best proposals that's come to this campus in years. It's a proposal for a multidisciplinary research center. It is a center that will bring the academic mission to what we're talking about here tonight. It's a center that will conduct research and that will help not only on the campus but far beyond and in the community itself. That is a center by Christia Spears-Brown and Melinda Price, once again from the College of Arts and Sciences and the College of Law. We are very pleased to support that particular effort, and that is one that I think that will be a first for the University of Kentucky. I thank you for your time. The next presenter is Provost Tracy.
Thank you, Terry. The concern I've been asked to address and I want to address tonight is that of accountability. We want to make sure that we have appropriate measures by which we measure our progress, but also ways that we hold individuals accountable for that. And so some of the concerns the students mentioned were things like transparent communication of the outcomes, meeting our strategic plan objectives, and then again, how do we assess accountability for that. And so I want to show you a triangle that I in my very poor artwork, but that I created, that I think helps spell out some of our philosophies on this. We have our strategic plan metrics, our university strategic plan metrics that are set out, not only metrics, but the targets for that. And they are targets for the university through that process. But to achieve those goals, you really have to have alignment of your other metrics and the key leaders involved in that. So our colleges and their strategic plans have to be aligned with the university strategic plan metrics, certainly on issues related to diversity, but also research, undergraduate student success, all of those factors that are part of our strategic plan. So those need to be aligned, but also then you have to have the accountability with individuals. And so in the bottom right-hand corner, there you see Dean and Key Leader performance evaluation metrics. And so beginning this year, each dean has in their performance evaluations not only goals with respect to retention, graduation rates, research, but also goals with respect to diversity and inclusivity in their individual colleges. We always have had those goals for the colleges, they've been there, but now each dean is accountable for their colleges and how that rolls up in the university strategic plan. So we've developed that for all of those key leaders. We do have had and we will continue to even more broadly annually report on our diversity metrics and how we're progressing along those key measures. But also that strategic plan has those aggressive metrics for underrepresented minority student enrollment, but also student success. So how do we close that gap in terms of progress and in terms of graduation rates and achieve those aggressive goals there, but also continue to diversify our student population and have an even more diverse, but also welcoming and inclusive environment for students. And then the third factor, which we're going to talk about even more in just a moment, is faculty, administrative, and professional employment. How do we hold ourselves accountable for the number of people that we have of all groups, and particularly marginalized groups in all areas, be it executive, administrative, managerial, be it faculty, professional staff, as well as the student populations. And I'd like to say not only employment, but promotion and retention of those individuals. Making sure that we have an environment that helps promote them throughout their careers, both in terms of assistant, associate, full professor, or to other administrative positions, but also retain them throughout the process and help them make sure that, again, UK is an environment that they want to be in and can thrive and succeed in. So with that, I think I will turn it over to Dr. Sanja Feast-Price, who's going to really follow up on this, particularly on the faculty aspect, talking about some of the concerns related to faculty advancement, faculty roles, and retention, promotion, and recruitment of faculty. Sanja.
So thank you, Provost Tracy, and good evening. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here to share information with you about the Office of Faculty Advancement. I have been on faculty for 24 years. I'm a licensed psychologist. I'm a faculty in the College of Education and the Department of Early Childhood, Special Education, and Rehabilitation Counseling. I've been in my current position for nearly 2 years, and I have really enjoyed the opportunities associated with issues regarding recruitment, retention, faculty development for UK's faculty. So the two concerns that I will be addressing, it's one primary concern with a bullet as well. It talks about the lack of African American professors and their retention on campus, along with intentionally funded recruitment plan and retention plan. As it relates to our actions, the Office of Faculty Advancement and the Office of Institutional Diversity have established a collaborative partnership focused on the recruitment and retention of faculty. The university has nearly doubled its diversity incentive funds, which are now $700,000. Initially, the amount allocated to the Diversity Incentive Fund was $380,000. Now that amount is $700,000. The Office of Faculty Advancement is also involved in some of the best practices for recruitment and retention. And in an effort to identify some of our best practices, we have looked at some of our benchmark institutions as well as other exemplary universities to learn some of the ways in which they have recruited faculty and retained faculty. And I'll take a brief moment to share with you some of the ways in which the Office of Faculty Advancement and the Office of Institutional Diversity have already moved forward on some of those issues. We recognize that, yes, faculty are separating from the University of Kentucky. One of the ways in which we wanted to capture some of the reasons why faculty are leaving was through a faculty exit survey. And our goal in capturing that information is to make sure that we use the information to ensure that the faculty that are here at the University of Kentucky, they remain here. So we use the information from the faculty exit survey to develop policies and procedures to improve the campus for our diverse faculty and for all of our faculty. And so our efforts regarding the faculty exit survey started at the end of the spring 2015, and they will continue every semester to understand the separations and to impact retention of our faculty. We also have a relationship, and we're understanding ways of recruiting through the Southeastern Regional Education Board and the Compact on Diversity, where a number of brilliant, talented, diverse faculty are graduating in almost every discipline that you can imagine. And so we're establishing partnerships so that the University of Kentucky can identify talented faculty to join us here at the university. The battery is low. So let's see, I can close that. All right. Another factor here at the university that we're paying attention to is the importance of hiring senior faculty as well as cluster hiring. We recognize that when we hire senior faculty as well as senior faculty, it significantly impacts the retention of our faculty here at the university, and so the university has a commitment in that area as well. Interim Vice President Allen and I have had conversations and strategy sessions with diverse faculty. We've had conversations with African American faculty to understand their experiences on campus, to hear their collective voices and understand how best to impact the campus climate. We've also met with Muslim faculty to understand their concerns and their perspectives on how to make this a better, more diverse, more inclusive environment. We've met with Hispanic faculty, and we're also scheduled to meet with our LGBTQ faculty later this month. And along with our other diverse populations, we will be meeting with Asian faculty, all with an effort to understand the ways in which we can improve our campus and make it a more diverse and welcoming community for all of our faculty. In addition, we have established the African American Faculty Advisory Committee, where we'll be coming together to understand ways in which we can impact our community for African American faculty. We have started the process of establishing a faculty council on diversity and inclusion that includes all of our diverse faculty constituents, again, to ensure that we understand the concerns and that as a collective, we are impacting change. It takes more than one or two people to impact change, the change that we hope for on this campus. But together, we can make this campus a better campus. The university is embarking upon an unconscious bias initiative that is very unique to any campus environment that we are aware of. And it's the unconscious bias initiative that impacts our faculty, our students, our staff, and our healthcare providers. With the Unconscious Bias Initiative, every faculty search committee, the members will be trained with the unconscious bias training. As well, all faculty will receive the unconscious bias training as well as ongoing engagement. These efforts are also being considered and in the process of implementation for students, for staff, as well as our healthcare administrators. I have 7%, so I will talk fast. We also recognize as one of those best practices the importance of mentoring. And we know that there are times when mentoring occurs in organic and natural ways, but we also recognize that we have to develop structured mentoring opportunities to ensure that our faculty are successful and that they want to remain at the University of Kentucky. We provide training to new and aspiring department chairs on issues related to mentoring junior faculty, and we also pay special attention to our diverse faculty and making sure that department chairs understand the unique needs and issues that are specific to our diverse faculty.
I just want to help out.
Sure. Okay, all right. And lastly, social engagement of our diverse faculty. We recognize that some of the reasons that people feel connected, it isn't always about their ability to succeed in terms of promotion and tenure, but we also recognize that belonging and social engagement is very important, are very important. And so along those lines, we're creating opportunities for social interactions. We start the academic year off with receptions so that people can come together, share research ideas, get to know each other, and just form those bonds that allow the campus community to feel like home and like a place where people would like to stay engaged. And so that pretty much covers what I'd like to share with you, and so I'd like to turn the mic over to my colleague, Dr. Charlie Carlson. Thank you for your attention.
When they gave Sonia the microphone, I thought, this is my chance. I'm going to walk in front of the table and see where I was supposed to sit. Turns out I was terribly disappointed because my name is not on the cards, but that's okay. Looks like I'm good to go, and I've got full power, so be prepared. Remember, who loves to get up and start professing. And I know I only have 5 minutes, so control your energy levels, and I will try to be brief. I was asked to speak to the issue of a class on race and ethnicity that all students must take as a graduation requirement. Now, you have to know that before I became the senior vice provost in October, I was a professor of psychology. And data is where I live and breathe. As a matter of fact, when I was diagnosed with cancer back in the early 90s. After I got the phone call, Mr. Carlson, you have cancer. And I recovered from just the stunning news, as those of you that have had serious life-threatening illnesses will appreciate. I thought to myself, I have got to get data. And so I literally walked as fast as I could to the medical school library and spent the next 4 hours studying colon cancer. So when I got the responsibility to deal with this question, I wanted to understand what the data are. And the first issue is that we have a UK core requirement, as listed on the overhead, that students will demonstrate an understanding of the complexities of citizenship and the process for making informed choices as engaged citizens in a diverse, multicultural world. And there are 6 credit hours that are required under the UK core requirements. The first requirement, I call it Pillar 9, if you count the number of pillars in the UK core, is to promote students' understanding of historical, societal, and cultural differences, such as those arising from race, ethnicity, gender, sexuality, language, nationality, religion, political, and ethnic perspectives in a diverse community or society in the United States. This semester, there were 28 courses that were on the books to address that issue. It also is the case that the second course requires an international focus on issues of diversity and multi-ethnic, multilingual world communities. This particular course, this current semester, has 33 courses that were being offered. What's interesting to me is that we need to examine how to address the concerns that are raised by the students and the faculty, that there needs to be a course on diversity and racial issues. We need to ask the question, what's failing with the courses that we have now? And rather than simply adding another course, be able to figure out what pedagogical strategies, what course contents will better foster an inclusive community. This is an imperative. This is not something that would be nice to have. And I asked, in terms of action, for a small group of faculty to study this question very carefully. You've heard the name of Christia Brown. I asked Christia to help Melinda Price address this issue because Christia is an international expert on how you do diversity training. We don't have to go outside of the university to find somebody who is skilled and well-versed in the research to think about how do you do training that's effective, because that's what we need. In addition to that, the Faculty Senate will also be working on this particular issue in evaluating the UK core requirements. So 2 initiatives are going forward simultaneously. Second, I believe it's very important to enhance the earliest experiences that students have here at the University of Kentucky. The K-Week programming needs to really focus on early engagement with diversity, so that as students come to this institution, they hear very clearly and very strongly what we value and hopefully how we practice. We're also planning to put a second diversity module in the UK 101 curricula. In addition to that, we're going to hire several professionals in the University Counseling Center who have expertise in diversity issues. We've heard your concern that if you're struggling and you go to the counseling center, there's not a person like you. We intend to change that with hiring and hiring practices that will ensure diversity, because this is an issue to address academic success. My title has in it, I'm the Senior Vice Provost for Academic Excellence. And if a student is struggling and we don't have the resources to address those concerns, we need to fix that. In addition to that, I, in November, was given the responsibility to address persistence, particularly with unmet financial need. And I was given $1.5 million to develop a program, an initiative to address unmet financial need. We put a pilot program in place as soon as we could to address unmet financial need, particularly as it related to students who had not registered for the spring semester because of financial holds or financial difficulties. I'm encouraged that in this pilot program we were able to provide 66 students with an opportunity to be back here for the spring semester. It's not the numbers that I would hope or the numbers that we need, but it's 66 students who would not otherwise be here because we have put into place a program to address unmet financial need. This is an ongoing program. We learned from our efforts in the late fall. We have initiatives to continue this through the spring semester so that we can provide students who have unmet financial needs who are also doing well in school with an opportunity to continue. Our goal in doing these initiatives from my end is to make sure that the directions we take are responsible and will address needs in ways that make for meaningful difference. When I took this job, there were a number of folks who said, "Can you really do this?" My view is as follows. Listen to the talk, trust the walk. Thank you.
So thank you again for allowing us to present to you tonight. We're going to be here in a panel session and have a few questions. And so thank you again on behalf of the panel members, and I'll turn it back over to Eric.
Thank you. We're glad you all gave those presentations. If people want to stick around a little bit longer, we have your questions, and we won't be able to ask all of them, but we will publish these questions and expect a response from administrators. So we're going to jump right in. We'll have one pre-written, and then we'll start with the questions from the audience.
The first question that we have received overwhelmingly was, where is Dr. Capilouto and where does he stand on these issues that we're presenting today, and when will he respond on these issues? That's for anyone, open to anyone.
So I think President Capilouto is certainly committed to these issues. He's intimately involved in this. As you know, he's met with the students in November as well as in February, and will continue his engagement in this process.
Okay. Well, the students will expect responses once we publish the questions and give everyone an opportunity for a thoughtful response. So we look forward to hearing from you all and President Capilouto especially. So I'm going to start with a pre-written question. So this one I will direct to Dr. Tim Tracy. And I'll reference what Mr. Allen said when he said that I acknowledged that we were hard on OID, as we should be hard on OID. But a part of the problem is when we talk about restructuring OID, we rarely talk about real numbers and what kind of financial commitment is going to be made. So before resources can be allocated, like before you can make promises, how are you going about, like, what is the budget going to be? and what's the priority for what units are going to receive the budget. So we talked a little bit about CARES, but what is the financial commitment? Do we know that right now to OID? And how is there a team for best practices to decide how that money is going to be used to change that office?
So Interim Vice President Allen and I work very closely together. Two things we've already done is, as you heard, was the bias incident response team that is in place, also the counselor, and those all came out of our joint efforts as well to help fortify those efforts. I'd also like to add that Dr. Sonja Feast-Price is in the process of taking on a much more expanded role in her process, and that will involve an expansion of her efforts in the faculty recruitment, retention, and promotion related to that, and that will include financial resources as well. But in answer to the rest of your question, again, as Vice President Allen goes through his restructuring process, then that's where we put the budget together with it. So as he develops that and as he's developed these first initiatives, we've worked with him to put together the funding for those that I've just described. But also now as he continues to put that together, we'll continue to work on the funding as he rolls that out that office and continues that expansion and restructuring of that office.
I just would like to suggest something that Dr. Fitz-Price was talking about with Best Case. She talked a lot about the research that they were doing and a team that's doing the research to decide how that restructuring is going to happen. And so we'd like at a later point for you all to release how that team is going to be designed, who those people are, and how you're going about deciding what's the best way to restructure the office. It's been around for a while. Okay, now we're going to move over to the questions from the audience.
So the first question is for Mr. Victor Hazard. So here's the question from the audience. In your more than 20 years spent working at UK, have statistics on race-related incidences other than hate crimes been published and publicized? If not, why?
As far as I know, those statistics obviously are published by our University of Kentucky Police Department as it relates to categories where hate crimes would be articulated. There have been indeed cases in my 20 years history related to race and ethnicity where students have been adversely impacted or affected by them. Some were even articulated, I think, on the projection here just earlier before this panel presented. Indeed, I can tell you that action has come forward on a number of these cases. I can't tell you explicitly my memory is not good enough to be able to tell you jot and tittle of what exactly action was taken against students. And I think that's one of the problems that we encounter is indeed there is not a publication that I would not publish through my judicial statistics what action I might take against a student other than to say that appropriate institutional action has been exercised against that student. And so to me, and as many of you know, those are confidential records that indeed with regards to individual student discipline, but I can assure you that action has been taken in time past and in recent days, not recent days, but recent times related to judicial action against students.
A follow-up for that one is just that although the specifics of each case may not be able to be published, one thing that students would like to know is where to find the details of how to go about reporting specifically. Rather than to the police, what is UK's mechanism? Where are the procedures? Where are they visible, and how will students know about them?
Those procedures, many of them obviously are being exercised, as if you heard Carol Taylor with regards to the bias response team will be part of that initiative related to, but finding those statistics and dealing with those on a case-by-case basis will be evolving as we roll out the bias student support services. In particular, obviously, the BERT team that has been mentioned as well would be part and parcel to a larger faculty and staff orientation of bias incidences, excuse me.
The next question. Okay. The next question is for Dr. Susan Carvalho. When it comes to recruitment and outreach, how does UK plan on appealing more minorities to the graduate school and beyond?
In my interim role, I've really worked hard to increase conversation around this, and I'll just briefly list some of the initiatives that we have taken so far. We have training for directors of graduate studies, both in holistic application review that allows for avoiding some similarity bias, not just bringing in students who look like the professors currently in place, and also how to create campus visits that offer a sense of community to students. I think too often our programs operate as islands, and there is a broader community here on campus that we need our recruits to know that they will find that community when they come here. So that's on the part of directors of graduate studies. We've had 2 workshops. We've incorporated both data and recommendations into 3 full meetings of directors of graduate studies. In addition, UK has become member of a consortium called the National Name Exchange that has 2 benefits for African American students. It allows our underrepresented undergraduates to upload their profile, and all universities in the consortium can have access to that profile and court students who offer the kinds of credentials that are a good match for their program from underrepresented groups. And also, by joining that consortium, we are able to tap that database and look for students, establish relationships even while they're in their sophomore or junior year, even before they know what program they might want to pursue. And that gives us a chance to open doors to people who might not know which door to knock on, and to be much more proactive instead of sitting back and seeing who applies. And I want to applaud Assistant Dean Pat Bond for her leadership, and Dr. Price, who's going to be leading that initiative going forward, for their support in that. National Name Exchange also offers trainings that we'll be taking part in. And then in addition, we want to make sure that we explore financial aid options for students who don't already have TA-RA-GA lines, and so we're looking at that to engage a broader array of programs in diversity recruitment. And then Dr. Price mentioned the Diversity Advisory Board, Graduate Diversity Advisory Board, and they are working with the communications officers in every college so that we are presenting a more diverse image of UK, reflecting the full diversity of the campus on websites, in communications, and in all kinds of publications that will reach potential graduate students. And then finally, partnerships with HBCUs to be proactive in seeking students and retaining our own African American undergraduates in our own graduate programs.
Thank you.
And working with students to hear your ideas on what else we should be doing. Thanks.
So the next question is for Mr. Terry Allen or for Dr. Tracy. What is being done to assess the cultural competency of faculty/staff through the hiring process, during the performance review process, as well as ongoing training of the already employed individuals?
So, I'll start and then go. So we've instituted a reporting system where now all faculty search committees report through the provost office the diversity of those search committees, and that's all monitored through our office and the Office of Faculty Advancement. So that's one step that we've taken. The second is the unconscious bias training, and senior leadership has gone through first stages of that. Board of Trustees and senior leadership, in fact, on Wednesday will be going through some of that training. And the next step is to take that to search committees, faculty search committees. The other part is then the deans and department chairs who do the faculty performance evaluations, helping them with not only unconscious bias training, but also other cultural competency training, so to help them through those individual processes. And I'll let Vice President Allen follow as well.
Well, something else that occurs each and every year is there's an analysis that's conducted, and it's called a utilization analysis. And what that is you go into each particular unit and you take a look at the availability of faculty in the relevant labor market, and you determine what is the makeup of faculty in the units based on those particular availability analyses. In fact, I talked this morning about speaking with the leadership of healthcare, and I had a considerable amount of data in which we actually went through, and I talked to them about the areas in which they are what's called underutilized. So again, these are measures, this is data that's collected on an annual basis and that is shared, and it's very transparent. It's very transparent, and the individuals in the particular units, in particular having to do with evaluation of their performance since Provost Tracy took office, will be held strictly accountable for the utilization of faculty.
So we'll make this the last question. This question is for Dr. Carlson. At another university in the state of Kentucky, my daughter has the mandated to attend a freshman tolerance sensitivity course. This course was designated to promote inclusion and enforcement of the LGBTQ community. Does this university require a class on race and race relations?
Well, as I hope I pointed out, we have two requirements that every student must fulfill in order to be graduated from our institution. Unfortunately, the requirements have not addressed the felt needs. And it's our intention that we're going to look at this very carefully with the leadership of Dr. Melinda Price and Dr. Christia Brown to ensure that we address this issue in a way that's meaningful and that will result in the kinds of outcomes that we intend.
And so those are our questions from the audience. And just once again, we've been getting overwhelming responses from Twitter. And one question in particular people continue to ask throughout the entire talk is, could someone say what was the engagement that was so important for President Capilouto? That's what the people wanted to know. Like, why couldn't he be here? Does anyone know?
So, President Capilouto. President Capilouto had scheduled for many months an engagement in Florida with a number of key individuals, alumni, and friends of the university that had been scheduled many, many months before.
Okay. And so one of the things that we look forward to doing, once again, is we want to try and plan as soon as possible to find out when the other student concerns can be answered. We are so grateful that you all made it out and that you were able to come out and ask the questions. And we are so thankful that it was so important to all of you, like it is to us, to have this conversation beyond the closed door, small room meetings. And so, you know, I think one thing that's important to take away from this is you've begun this conversation. You've begun to tell administrators exactly what it is that you want. And now they're having to listen to you. Don't let it stop with the town hall. They need to have pressure. They need to know that you want the rest of your questions answered. And so it takes all of your voices. So stand up and be heard, and don't let this be the end of it. And so hopefully we'll be sending out something in the future with the next engagement or timeline for the other questions and initiatives that have been proposed to the administrators. Once again, thank all of you for your time. Well, before you all go, we just want to say thank you to all of the people that have made this happen. So go back. I want to say thank you to them first. The Town Hall Planning Committee, Rose Archimet, Tina Beckett, Alex, Candace Crowell, Courtney Hart, there's Blanca and Della Mosley, all of the presenters, our advisors, Chastity Holloman, Dr. Colette, Chester Grundy, Gerald Smith, Melinda Price. But thank you all for the financial support, these colleges.
Great job. Proud of you.
SGA, College of Medicine.
I guess it's too late.
College of Engineering.
Hi, Dr. Grossman. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good.
Yeah. Well.